Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Pure IT's Tech Roundup, where we highlight a curated combination of technologies, client stories, or other industry-related bites for you to consume. Let's dive in. Today, we have Brian Davidson with us here, the CEO of Congruity360. Thank you, Brian, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I love to start out and just kind of understand a little bit about how Congruity360 got started, if you can give us a little bit of background, and then dive into what is it doing in the financial space specifically? How is this solution differentiating itself?
Sure. So, Congruity360 got started really back in the early 2000s, always focused exclusively on enterprise storage, helping people get data to where it needs to go, whether that was to new Isilon or Pure Storage or NetApp arrays, but also as times have progressed into various clouds. At this point in time, we're pretty much exclusively focused on the unstructured data management space. I believe we have some very differentiated offerings that are helping many different segments, financial being one of those. With financial as a whole, I think one of the major challenges they have is just compliance. Data is being created in many different sources, very difficult to track and manage, specifically from those unstructured data sources. And we're helping people ultimately normalize all the information coming into them and ensuring that the right data can be in the right place at the right time, both from a compliance perspective, but also from a business optimization perspective. Are you spending budget on what you need to? And are you ultimately protecting the data that needs to be protected?
So I think that's great. You highlighted a couple of things, right? Sometimes our data organically grows and it becomes this whole behemoth and beast all on its own. And Congruity360 can really help you narrow it down. How many, who has access to what? And we'll get into a little bit of kind of the components of the tool. But I think where this tool really differentiates itself is you can have this single pane of glass that really enables you to drill all the way down as deep or as I'll say compliancy, I'm making up words here, compliancy as you want to go. But the benefit can be for many departments, right? Maybe it's from a leadership, a CEO perspective. I want to know who has access to critical or maybe IP related to our business, like things, maybe just our board reports. I want to make sure that those aren't out floating around to the technology team, to compliance, who really finds obviously a ton of value in this tool. Can you break down the components of the tool a little bit for us?
Yeah, so ultimately we have three different modules. So enterprise insights you can look at as an analytics engine. What do we have? Where does it sit? So you're looking at file extensions and types. You're looking at the size of the files. You're looking at, who has access to that information. And then we have another suite of products called Action. So after I've identified access controls, in almost every single instance, there's some remediation that needs to happen. How do I make sure that I'm cleaning up anything that I'm finding that I wish didn't exist? Many compliance initiatives are just starting today or have happened over the course of the last couple of years, but data has been being stored for the last 10 or 15 years or even 100 years in certain organizations. So how do I ensure that I'm going through and kind of cleaning up some of those sins of the past so that I can modernize for the future? And then that final component we have from a module standpoint is really our Comply360 suite. That's focused on AI enablement, automation. How do you ensure that, when I'm putting in a process or a policy, that I can force that throughout any organization and business unit that I want to have it applied to? I think one of the biggest things that stops those modernization efforts are cost, obviously, because people only have so much money to spend. But more importantly, each department has their own way of doing business. And those various blockers, if you can't allow policies to be driven at a specific business unit, it's very difficult to get people rowing in the same fashion quickly. Our platform allows for you to go through and kind of build out those policies so that each business unit can really control their own data sets while still looking after the business's overall value prop of protecting their data, protecting their end users, and again, making the business more profitable.
For our credit union partners to really be able to automate what that policy enforcement looks like. So from the beginning, you can look at like what insights, just take me through, what does it look like? Oh boy, this is what it found. This is where it lives. This is who has access to it. This is how old it is. I shouldn't have things that are this old, right? And then to go through to take a next step and say, okay, well, I want to take some action on it, to actually even that final step to say, we took action. Now, how do we keep this clean? How do we keep this data in a state that we feel high confidence with, that we don't have to touch it all the time, and we feel like it's always the machine running behind the scenes, keeping
Right.
us automated in a way that makes sense for the business. So I think that's phenomenal. This is really a great value add for a lot of the partners that I think we have in the industry specifically.
Yeah, status quo is always easiest. I spent
Right.
X amount of dollars on storage last year, so I can do it again with a 10% increase. That's not really the way that it works. A lot of that budget that's being spent is being spent on useless storage that has no business from a security standpoint or business value for the ongoing organization. So if I can clean that up and free up space and recapture that budget to spend on a security initiative or an AI initiative, all of those things are really what's going to allow a business to transform, because it's easy for the executive team to get behind reallocating spend off of really initiatives that are now being wasted because of legacy applications or legacy thought processes. Back in 2010, 2015, 2020, data wasn't growing as fast as it is. But now,
Right.
especially in your space with the credit unions, there's consolidations going on everywhere, mergers and acquisitions. You're immediately taking over all the liabilities for that organization. And if you can't really quantify the exposure that you have for bringing on that data estate, you have a lot of risks that are coming into the business. And again, potentially a lot of overlapping costs as well.
So I love that you brought that up, because that was actually where my mind was going as well. We hate to see it, right? But we
Mhm.
are seeing more and more consolidation in the credit union space, in the small community banking space. What is Congruity 360? How can Congruity 360, if I'm looking at acquiring a credit union, say credit union, I'm a big bad credit union. I'm going to acquire a credit union, merge with them. It's going to be amicable, but they do have a lot of maybe systems, data storage, all different types of things that is not familiar to my team. What does Congruity 360 do? How can they help me on that?
Yeah, so one of the best things that I think we do is we have a ton of out of the box modeling that doesn't require a sophisticated services team to run against. You don't need to hire consultants to figure out access control. You don't need to hire consultants to find out, NYDFS modeling, which is one of the big regulations in financial. You can go out and find driver's licenses, passports, and all this sensitive PII that's sitting out there just by clicking a button. And with that,
Hmm.
you're giving the visibility to the team to say, do I need to keep that or do I not? Is it within retention? Is it out of retention? Any decision is both a buying decision along with a risk decision. So if I'm not cleaning up that estate, I can have some major downstream problems that I want to get ahead of before I take that data into my control. So I think for M&A, that out of the box modeling is really something that differentiates us from just about everybody else in the market.
That's awesome. Thank you, Brian. What else have we not covered today that would be valuable for either someone in the credit union space, in the community banking, financial services industries? Even we have a ton of fintechs that we are involved with. Anything else to add? Because I feel like we have taken a ton of information from you already. But is there anything else, Brian, that you want to share with us today?
I think probably like the biggest thing we've learned, I mean, we're working with many large Fortune 500 organizations, but the thing today is compliance goes down to SMB, mid-market, all the way up to enterprise. There's
Right.
nobody that's, safe from a breach or ransomware attack. And realistically, there's nobody that's doing it perfectly. So if you can figure out, how to get the basic blocking and tackling of, again, who has access to what, do I need it or do I not? Those types of basic functionality just really hasn't existed in an IT organization. Everybody has a gut instinct that I need this data or I don't. Certain people are accessing it or they're not, but it's really more beneficial when you can put evidence in front of all the teams and say, all right, we have this area of exposure. How do we kind of close down some of these open areas for data security posture management and just security as a whole? And again, that evidence package that I think platforms like ours can bring to the table just hadn't existed previously. So it's okay to find some faults within the organization and want to close those up. I think many people try to get defensive and, no, we don't have that exposure, but at the end of the day, we all do. There's many, many, many different areas that data can sprawl and proliferate, and being able to just kind of get the whole teams working together, finally aiming towards a more secure organization. Like that's what we're aiming to do and clean up every day. And again, you just kind of dig in and get everybody rowing in the same direction. You know, you don't need to take a month or 6 months to gain business value. We're going to show you immediate results. Many times we'll offer that as a service for little to no cost, just to show a basic evidence package, knowing that, you know, we're going to have some long-term ability to have good conversations thereafter. So, you know, again, the biggest thing is just getting the evidence up to the E team to be able to go through and try to quantify what do we do next. And but again, it's a challenge that everybody has to do because data is just growing so fast right now. It's becoming borderline unmanageable, and we can help kind of keep it from going into complete chaos.
I know. I see a ton of value here for not only our industry, but I would venture to say every industry, right? Because you're absolutely right with the data growth. So thank you so much, Brian, for your time today. And we appreciate you guys joining us for Tech Roundup. Stay tuned for the next one.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks.